There you go. There you go.
Ciao. Good morning. Buongiorno.
Buongiorno. How do I respond?
Buongiorno.
Good. It's a pleasure to have you join me this beautiful morning. Yes, let me introduce you to our Nigerian followers out there. This is Daniel Bowen, host of the Napoli Nation TV. A couple of weeks ago, we had his son right here on an IG live session, Mario Bowen. And as you guys know, these guys are addicted with Napoli. And that is exactly what we will be talking about during the course of our conversation today. Daniel Bowen, of course, based in Italy at the moment. Can you tell us your current location as we speak? What's your current location?
My current situation? Location. I'm at home right now.
Okay, great. Where exactly?
It's near Venice. It's the closest town that maybe some people are familiar with is Pordenone. It's about an hour away from Venice.
Great. So, yeah, Daniel, you are an American, and naturally we will expect you should be out there at the NBA All-Stars game, rooting for the Lakers, rooting for LeBron, rooting for Steph. Oh, great. Okay, rooting for Jordan. I think you're the Jordan FC. Great. But rather, you're out there in Italy supporting Napoli. Where tell us this romance. Where did it start? Where did this love journey
Oh boy. So this is my family right here. And this is one of the first games we went to as a family, and it didn't start right away, Francis. It was something that built up for a while. I married my wife in '95. First time I was in Napoli was '93. I didn't really watch calcio at all. It just wasn't one of my interests. I was more interested in, basketball, like you said earlier, with the NBA and football in America. But I went several years without really watching. I barely missed the Maradona era. So, like, if I had made it to Napoli when Maradona was playing, I'm sure somebody would have dragged me to the stadium and I would have fell in love right away. But my love didn't start until 2005 or 6. I always get those years mixed up. When Maradona actually came to the stadium, he had been in Napoli for several years before that. And he just came to the stadium and he walked around just to wave to the fans. And the stadium felt like it had 100,000 people in it, and half of them were crying. Several people, I saw a couple of people faint, and they were singing the entire time. So after I saw that, I was hooked. I said, I got to go see a real game. So I started watching games that very next year, and I just fell in love with it, man. It's the fans that brought me to sports, and I've built up the love for the club over the years, but the love I had for the fans was from day one.
Great. An amazing story right there where you saw Diego Armando Maradona. That would have been a life-changing experience for sure.
It was absolutely life-changing. I didn't really know who he was other than he was a legend in Napoli, and I saw all the shrines throughout the city, and I felt like, okay, let me see what the hoop and holla is about, and it's real, Francis. The passion that Napoli has for him and the club in general is something out of this world. You won't see it anywhere else in Europe.
Great. Yes. I think that's really good to know, obviously. Now, let's talk about Napoli and the current situation they are in at the moment with the man Luciano Spalletti. Over the years, Napoli has had some really good managers. I mean, Don Carlo Ancelotti was once the coach of Napoli. We also had Mauricio Sarri, who did an amazing job with Napoli, in all honesty. But none of them have been able to achieve the level of success Luciano Spalletti is achieving at the moment and is set to achieve by the time the season comes to an end. What have he done differently that have made this level of success we are witnessing today?
You know, honestly, I think the most thing that he's done is just to make sure that the players are ready each and every match and that they don't think about failing. Like, whenever they play, they are not worried about failing. And as you know, Spalletti started his tenure with Napoli last year, and they started out really, really good. And then they started to falter a little bit once they met Inter at home. And I think that was a moment where Spalletti was like, you know, I want to make sure I get to the Champions League, so let me be a little bit careful here and just make sure that I meet that goal, because that was the absolute objective by the club when they got him on board. And I think he knew in the back of his head, oh, I've got some people leaving, including our captain, that is part of the problem with the mentality. And once I can get rid of him and get some newer players that can come in that are young and hungry, then maybe I got something here. And you could tell from game one in Verona this year that he knew what he had. From game one, the combination of Victor and Cavada started in game one, and it hasn't stopped. And all the other players that Napoli has gotten this year, like Kim, you know, Kim has been a huge boost to the actual organization of the defense. Losing Koulibaly was a loss. We all knew that we were going to feel the impact of that loss, but Kim has kept it going. He really has. And the entire team just has the right mentality. And Spalletti, you can't give enough credit to Spalletti, making sure that they stay focused and that they understand how good they actually are.
Great. Yeah, we talk about Kim, the Korean, and I can remember after the game against Roma, Jose Mourinho actually talked about Kim and said he wanted to sign him when he was at Tottenham, but he couldn't because the Tottenham board didn't know him then. But I mean, filling the shoes of a Kalidou Koulibaly, who has even struggled to adjust to life in London with Chelsea right now, he definitely did a whole lot, Kim. I think he's been very underrated in what we have.
Absolutely.
Great. Now, let's talk about Victor, obviously. What were your first impressions about Victor Osimhen? I mean, this was a guy from Lille Metropole, did just one good season at Lille Metropole in France. And then Napoli were set to sign him for 72 million euros or thereabouts. And this was a guy who, I mean, to a large extent was really here to prove himself, you know, to the European football and even world football as a whole. So what did you make of his transfer? And also, you know, the sacrifice that Gattuso had to make in order to get Osimhen at Napoli, even having to reduce his salary in order to fund his transfer. What did you make of Victor Osimhen the first time he stepped foot at Napoli?
I'll be honest with you, the first time that I saw him play, I knew that he had the desire to give 100% from the very get-go. There was no doubt that the one thing was that he has a motor that never stops. So that was evident immediately. And then the other thing that you notice is his speed, his size, his athletic ability, his ability to get high in the air, all those things that you want in a striker, he had. What he needed to work on, I think, is just his calmness. I think that his ability to lead more on the pitch has grown immensely since he came on board. And now that he's put everything together, the sky is the limit.
Great. Absolutely brilliant. And you can say those are aspects of Victor's game that has improved this season in terms of his temperament. Last season, he was very temperamental. But now, I think he shows more control.
Oh, absolutely. I'm trying to think. I don't think there's been one moment in any match where he has lost control like he's done before. He hasn't gotten any red cards. You can tell that his passion is even more than it was before, but he's using it in the right way, and he's not reactive to things that maybe he should be reactive to from an emotional standpoint, but he's keeping his emotions in check, and that has made a huge difference in, you know, all but one loss. We have one loss the entire season, one loss. And he's been a huge impact on that. So, I mean, one of the things that I'll never forget is I went to watch a practice at the training grounds, and listening to him and the way that he was talking on the pitch and yelling out commands and his desire in practice, just like it is in a game, that has to be part of his development. Just the fact that he is wanting to become more of a leader on and off the pitch, including on the training ground.
How about his impact on the pitch itself? Are there aspects of his game you think needs improvement? Or will you say this is the finished product as it stands right now?
Needs improvement. Can't say consistency, because before consistency was a little bit of a thing, and he scored in 7 straight games. Maybe his clinical part of his game, like when he's in front of goal, to be somebody that never misses. We noticed in the last game versus Sassuolo that he had a moment where he was all by himself and he used his off foot and the shot went off the bar. That would have been a moment where if he can get to where he's 100%, not 100% right, but near 100% clinical in front of goal, especially when nobody's there, for him to just to break down and be more calm and just put the ball where it can go to actually get past the goalie.
So he needs to be more clinical and show more composure.
I think so. If there was one thing I could pick that he has room to get better at, that's absolutely it.
I don't know if you've seen on social media, particularly on Twitter, this comparison between Osimhen and Manchester United's Marcus Rashford, who have been in stunning form this season. And of course, there's been a whole lot of comparison on who really is the hottest striker in European football at the moment. Tell me, Daniel, what do you have to say about that? All
I have to say is he's in the Premier League, and the Premier League is never going to show respect like they should outside their league. They actually, there's been a couple of things that I've seen on social media that has said who is the most informed or the best striker right now or the best player, and Osimhen wasn't on a couple of those. How is that possible? Either somebody's not watching or somebody just doesn't want to give the respect that's deserved for whatever reason. It's idiotic, and any pundit out there that can say that he is not in the top 4 is not being honest. And how can you not say that he is the most informed, best striker right now? You got other players like Holland, of course, way more goals than Osimhen, but Holland gets a lot of tap-ins, man. The way that he's positioned on the pitch, he's in front of goal quite a lot, and he gets a lot of tap-ins because of all the action that's going on around him. Rashford is a great player. You know, Mbappe is a great player. Mbappe has not been informed, though. You know, he's dealing with some injuries, and he just hasn't made the impact that we're used to seeing. So if you're saying right now, today, it's Victor. And I don't think there's a debate about it, to be honest. That's just my honest-to-God opinion.
Great. Then let's delve into an issue Napoli fans hate to talk about, including you, but it's inevitable. This discussion will always come up whenever we're talking about Napoli and Victor Osimhen. Is his imminent move out of the club, his future with Napoli at the moment? We know that irrespective of what happens this season, during the summer, you have a lot of big fish circling around for Osimhen's signature, and he has just a year left in his contract. Now, what do you think De Laurentiis can actually do to keep Osimhen right now, who is his most prized asset? Putting that in line with a Kalidou Koulibaly, who was hot in demand for a lot of years, just up until last season, where De Laurentiis, I think, just considered letting Kalidou Koulibaly leave. But what did he do with Kalidou Koulibaly to keep him for that long, despite the rumors out of the club, and also how he can apply that to the season?
Hey, Francis, if I'm not mistaken, I think Osimhen has 2 years left on his contract. Doesn't his contract expire in 2025? Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, there's 2 years. So there's no rush to try to even think about selling him. And Laurentiis has already done an interview stating that he doesn't need to sell any players because Napoli is in such good financial stability right now. They have no need to do that. So that's first. Second, you mentioned Koulibaly and why Koulibaly stayed for so many years after all those summers of hearing the rumors that he was going to be sold. Here's the deal, man. Number one, Laurentiis does not sell any of his superstars for any reduced amount of what their actual value is. That's number one. He's never done that. So he's very stubborn in that sense. And in some ways it's good. In some ways it might not be so good. Because we know if we had sold Koulibaly years back, we would have probably gotten double for what we sold him recently, right? But in my honest opinion, for players that are that good and mean that much to the club's success, unless you're in financial dire straits, you should not sell your superstars. And the way that Napoli is right now and the way they're built, they are destined for a dynasty. So there's no reason to sell Victor. Now you ask, why did Koulibaly not try to force his way out? I'm going to tell you why. Because Koulibaly loved playing in Napoli. He loved the fans. He loved the environment. He loved the scenery. He loved the weather. He loved the food. I mean, I could go on and on why Koulibaly did not leave. Laurentiis wasn't going to sell him for something that was not worth his value, and Koulibaly just loved playing for that city. And Koulibaly wanted to bring a Scudetto to Napoli before he left. He really wanted to do that, and he held out as long as he could. And then when he saw that his departure was going to benefit Napoli, it was easier for him to accept, right? So hopefully Victor is thinking about this and he can understand what he means to the city, to the club, to Calcio in Italy, and what he can do to sort of like stick it in the Premier League's face and say, okay, you don't want to recognize me because I'm not playing there. Well, I'm going to show you a thing or two, and I'm going to build the dynasty for this Italian club, and I'm going to finish my prime in Napoli before I actually go somewhere where I know I can make a whole lot of money. You know what I mean? I hope he's feeling like that. I hope he understands that. Now, Laurentiis, to keep him to stay, Laurentiis is going to need to do two things. Number one, he's going to need to make him the highest paid Napoli player in the history of the club, because Victor Osimhen deserves that respect, right? Number two, he's going to need to convince Osimhen that he is now 100% winner and he wants to get more trophies, including fighting to win the Champions League. Laurentiis has already said in his interview, why are we talking only about the Scudetto? We can win the Champions League. So that's a good sign for me, and I'm sure Victor has heard that he said that, and Victor's got to be thinking about that. So there's no rush to sell him. Let's do one more year. You know, the Scudetto is pretty much wrapped up. They have an opportunity to go very far in the Champions League. And if I'm Victor and I get to the Champions League semifinal or the final, and I know Laurentiis is going to bring in a couple pieces next season, I don't want to leave, man. I want to win the Champions League. And if I go to another team, am I guaranteeing that I'm going to win the Champions League with anybody? No, but why don't I try to do something special and historic with Napoli by winning the Champions League? You know what I mean?
All right. So a lot of talk have been about Victor, but also there's been a lot of talk as well about Kabbalah, who has been his partner in crime. They are like the hottest duo in European football at the moment. Between both players, who would you say have made the biggest impact?
That's a good question. So the reason it's a good question is because they've both made a huge impact this season, right? But this is Victor's third year, if I remember right. I think this is third year, and his impact was felt right away. But he's built his impact to what he's actually doing this season, right? Cavada. This is Cavada's first season. Nobody knew he was coming from. Nobody knew this was going to happen. There's not one person in the entire world that knew he was going to be able to make this impact. I know that there was clubs that knew that he had the potential, but you could honestly talk about Cavada and Osimhen once the Scudetto is won, and depending how far they get in the Champions League, you could talk about both of those players and being a Ballon d'Or candidate. I mean, why not? Bringing a Scudetto to Napoli for the first time since the Maradona era, getting to the semifinal, the final in the Champions League. They have a chance to break the record in points earned in Serie A. If they do that, there's no reason that they both should not be mentioned as Ballon d'Or winners if they stay on this pace.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think I agree with you right there, 100%. Away from that as well, let's talk about, we've talked a lot about the Champions League. And of course, Champions League football resumes for Napoli this week against Frankfurt in Germany. What would you say will be a good finish for Napoli in the Champions League? You've talked a lot about Victor Osimhen thinking of building a dynasty that will not just see them win the Scudetto or dominate Italian football like the Milan teams did dominate in the past, but also express that dominance in European football, because Italian teams have fallen off the pecking order when it comes to European football over the past few years. Remember the days of the Milan clubs, Inter and AC were very, very dominant. So what would you say will represent a good finish for Napoli in the Champions League this season, and also their game with Frankfurt? I mean, in your podcast, you talked about a 2-2 finish. You predicted a 2-2 finish, yes, in the first game in Napoli, or in Germany, rather. And so what do you have to say about it?
Well, here's the thing, man. So Frankfurt is a very good team. They are in the hunt for the Bundesliga title, even though they're sitting somewhere around 6th place. They are not far off of first. And they've had a really good run of form. They tied Bayern recently. So Bayern leads the Bundesliga, and they tied them recently. They have a very strong attack. They have some talented players, and they have some of the most passionate fans in the world. So you combine all of that together, when Napoli walks into that stadium, it's not going to be any joke. Frankfurt's going to be ready to play, and I think that they are going to exude their will and their energy onto Napoli, and Napoli's they're going to have some difficulties in this game. So I believe it will end in a draw, but I do think that there's going to be goals scored. I think there's some weaknesses in Frankfurt's defense, especially on the counterattack. So I see Napoli scoring at least 2 goals, but I also see just the sheer energy that team's going to have, that they're going to get a goal or 2. So, yeah, I'm sticking with that 2-2 prediction, and I don't think that's a bad result for Napoli, because when they go back to the Maradona, they're going to get blown out. Napoli going to destroy them in Napoli. If I had to predict the result right now, if they stay the way they're playing, which there's no reason why they shouldn't, a 2 or 3 goal win is what's going to happen in Napoli. So, but I do know that Spalletti, he is not going to come into that stadium with any different mentality. He's not going to play for a draw. He's coming to win that game. So it's going to be an amazing game, and I can't wait to watch it. It's been a minute since we watched some Champions League football, so I'm really looking forward to it. And I'm looking forward to Victor exuding his dominance, because he hasn't had that opportunity in Champions League this year due to the injuries. So, I mean, you saw what he was doing for Liverpool before he got out, right? He was coming at them boys, right? So I think he's looking forward to I think he's looking forward to this Champions League game so that he can prove to everybody, including the UK, why he is the best striker in football right now.
Great. I agree with you. I think the Champions League will represent a very, very good opportunity for Victor Osimhen to do so. Meanwhile, Spalletti himself, how does he find that balance between Napoli in the Scudetto race? I mean, it looks the race looks over as it stands right now. But you agree with me that Napoli have some personal goals that they'll try to reach, boxes they'll try to tick before the season comes to an end. And then here is the Champions League where they really need to put up a good performance. How does Spalletti find that balance? So
Spalletti so far this year hasn't really made any mistakes in his selection of players and formation. He's really stuck with the 4-3-3 the entire season. His one bad mistake was when he threw out a bunch of the subs in the Lecce game at home. That game ended in a draw. And I think he learned from that. I think that was earlier in the season. And I think he understands the combination of the players that he can play a whole lot more. So it's going to be easier for him to manage the rotation of players as he sees fits. And I don't know about you, Francis, but I haven't noticed any players on Napoli that have shown. But I think he'll monitor that on the training ground. And when he sees that a player is a little bit fatigued, I take that back. Politano, I think, has shown that a little bit. And he's made the right decision with Politano. He's played Lozano a whole lot more recently. I know Lozano's going to get a start in this game on tomorrow night. So I'm not concerned about he's going to manage the rotation of his players because he's done really well with that whole team.
Great. Meanwhile, Daniel, if Osimhen goes on to win the Scudetto, let's imagine this scenario. Osimhen goes on to win the Scudetto. He will win the Scudetto.
There we go.
He will.
There you go.
He will win. Okay, let me put it this way: when Osimhen wins the Scudetto, as well as the top goal scorer award in the league, how is it called again?
Caniere.
Great. Now, where will Osimhen rank amongst the Napoli greats? Maradona, Hamsik, Mertens, Insigne. Where will Osimhen fall amongst these guys?
Oh man. So you mentioned Maradona first. I think that he's going to need to build a dynasty to where he can get himself to where he's level with Maradona. One of the things that you have to remember about those Maradona days is the roster in itself was nowhere near the roster that it is today, right? So really, Napoli, if you had to come up with one weakness on their roster, it's probably the right wing. And Lozano is starting to get back into form. So do they have a weakness? No, they don't have any weakness. There was, the roster back in the day when Maradona was playing, there was moments where he really had to carry that team. And he came into a situation where they were close to being relegated, brought them to glory. So it's really hard to get to that level. But I do think he can if he stays, extends his contract, wins multiple Scudetti, and if he wins a Champions League. To me, what he meant to the club and the city, he's right there with Maradona. He is now on the same level, and you might as well put him right next to Maradona and all those shrines throughout the city. He has a very good opportunity to do that too. He's just going to need to realize that and understand that Laurentiis is never going to be able to pay him Premier League money, right? That's just unrealistic because of the revenue differences, TV contract, the monopoly that the Premier League has. He just needs to understand that Maradona did the same type of thing. Man, he left Barcelona one of the biggest clubs in the history of football, came to Napoli and built that legend that now is Diego Armando Maradona. We want to say Victor Osimhen in the same breath, man. We do. And I think he has a great opportunity to do that.
You know, all this talk about Maradona, I mean, it almost makes me want to tear up, because imagine Maradona being alive now. Just last year, Argentina went on to win the World Cup since he last did so in 1985, about some 36 years ago. And right now, yes, Napoli is set to win the Scudetto since he last powered Napoli to such a victory in 1990. Come on, man. Wow. What a story you have for Maradona.
So it's called destiny, man. And that destiny is being shot down from heaven, from Diego, down to Messi in Argentina, and now down to the city of Napoli. I mean, you know, he's sitting up there watching this, and he's living it up. He's living it up. And it would be so amazing if he was still alive for him to witness it. But he is witnessing it. He just witnessed it from heaven, man.
Great. Going forward, the Napoli Nation TV podcast with Mario and a couple of other guys. What should we look up to going forward? I've seen a couple of your delicacies out there on the podcast, and it's been interesting, you know, letting us know more about the dishes in Napoli and, of course, the scenery and every other thing. What should we look forward to going forward at the Napoli Nation TV podcast?
Just more of the same, to be honest, more than anything else. We're actually going to have Oma on as a guest again with another close friend of mine that's a journalist in the UK. His name is Mohammed Salad. I think I'm saying everything right there. I think his handle is Solid NFL, if I remember right. So he's a journalist that writes for the NFL also. So we're going to bring them both on and just talk about everything Napoli for a bit. I mean, the thing I would love to be able to do is get to 1,000 subscribers so I can go live from my phone, and to be able to do that when Napoli clinches the Scudetto from the city of Napoli would be crazy. So if I had a goal that I wanted to get to, which is pretty difficult right now because we're sitting at about 330 subscribers, it would be 1,000, so that I could actually do that once the Scudetto was clinched, or even by the end of the season to be able to go live while we're getting the trophy lifted. That would be an amazing thing to be able to do that. So that was what I would like to do. I don't know how realistic that is, just because there's a limited amount of Napoli fans throughout the world. It's not like I'm trying to get people on board that are Inter, Milan, or Juve fans, right? So I get that. But yeah, so mostly just more of the same. Yeah, I mean, I hope we can do that, but we'll see.
And before I forget, Daniel.
Oh, one more. Hey, Francis, one more thing I don't want to forget. The next thing that we're actually doing that I think people would be excited about is once we get to 500 subscribers, I am going to work my butt off to get a kit signed by one of the Napoli players. And here soon, I'll probably put out a poll once we get closer to 500 of which player people would prefer, and then do everything I can to find one of those players either at the training ground or after the game or something to get them to sign that kit for somebody that we'll give out in a giveaway.
Great. I think that would be a marvelous gesture, no doubt. That would be a marvelous gesture, no doubt. And like I said, before I forget, how many goals do you predict Osimhen to score in the league this season?
So at least 30. I mean, where's he at? Where's he at right now? 18, 17, or 18? 18? So he needs what, 12 more goals, and he's scoring at a goal a match pace, and he hasn't really had a lot of braces, and I think that those are coming too. So, dude, if I had to predict, he's going to get at least 30, and there's no reason that he can't imagine that he has a chance to actually match that record in Serie A of 36 goals, I believe is what it is, that Ciro Immobile has, and some other guy we don't need to mention.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much, Daniel. It has been an absolute pleasure having this conversation with you, and we look forward to having more of this with you alongside Mario as well. I think when he's back in Italy, it would be great to have both of you talk about Napoli and, of course, Victor Osimhen and every other thing that concerns
Absolutely.
the city. So,
it was a pleasure for me too, Francis.
great.
It was my honor.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Sempre.
Napoli Sempre. That's it. What does that mean?
Always.
What does that mean?
Forever. Yeah.
Great. Thank you very much, Mario. Daniel, beg your pardon.
All right.
Thank you very much. I'll see you soon, and definitely we'll make
Okay.
this happen.
All right. It was good to talk to you, Francis. Ciao.
Thank you. Ciao.